join palms. And repeat after me. I take refuge in the Buddha.
I take refuge in the Buddha.
I take refuge in the Dharma.
I take refuge in the Dharma.
I take refuge in the Sangha.
I take refuge in the Sangha.
And the palms join. Palms down. So there's this practice. One of the hardest things to do is to show up. And myself being introduced to Buddhism initially just through a book 23 years ago, it happened to be an Intro to Zen book by D.T. Suzuki. And when you look at D.T. Suzuki's teachings, Shunryu Suzuki's teachings at Bill Temple Zen Center, what they talk about is put a schedule in place in running a Zen Center and show up. And all the things that we talk about within Buddhism, if you've read one Buddhist article to, 50 years worth of Buddhist teachings, the same words you're going to hear. Compassion, loving kindness, generosity, morality, patience, diligence, concentration, wisdom, the 6 paramitas. You'll hear people talk about forgiveness, you'll hear people talk about going beyond judgment, you'll hear people talk about duality. So you'll hear people talk about a lot of these words that the Buddha was teaching. But if you don't show up, you don't have the opportunity to practice those. And to me, that's the diligence, one of the 6 paramitas. Paramitas, for those who don't know, paramitas translates loosely to the word perfection. And it doesn't mean you have to be perfect. Suzuki Roshi, who I mentioned, one of my favorite quotes, he says, "You're all perfect exactly how you are, and you all could use a little improvement." See, you're all perfect, so phenomenal. I don't even know why you're here. But I've used that as a great teaching. You're all perfect exactly how you are, and you all could use a little improvement. But you got to show up. And that's the hardest part. So the paramitas, being these practices that we use to go from a world of suffering, dukkha, discomfort, angst, dissatisfaction. I mean, it's 11 o'clock by now, so the chances are pretty slim, but did anyone have anything happen today that you didn't want to have happen? Show of hands. Oh, that's, I'm always happy when I'm pleasantly surprised. Anyone think that the rest of the day is going to go exactly how you want it to? Right? It's only 11 o'clock. Right? So by the time you go to bed tonight, and if you're coming in late, there's plenty of seats up front. Didn't mean to embarrass you by saying late. If you're coming in now, or embarrass you even more now, but it's always now. The paramitas are basically what we practice to go from discomfort, angst, dissatisfaction, and go into a peaceful, happy day. Learn to be okay with our lives. And one of those is diligence. And to me, I translate that to showing up. And in this context, we use it, show up to meditation, show up to the Dharma talk, show up to care for the temple, right? But we only do what we do here in a Buddhist context so it can relate back to your life. Otherwise, it's of no value, right? Other than us having a really clean temple, right? You must show up to everything you do. That's the practice. And that means work. That means family. That means relationships. That means friendships. That means school. That means traffic. And when I show up, I don't mean show up as a mean, angry person, but show up with the same kindness and compassion that you show up when you come to a place like this. Did anyone come in here today and start yelling and screaming at anybody? Probably not. If you did it really quietly, so good job. Right? But the idea is that we show up to places like this with an open mind and an open heart. But do we show up to everything else we do in our lives the same way? Or do we go into it filled with that pride and that ego and the anger and the ignorance? Right? So show up and then be present with that experience. And to me, that's what I really learned from the Zen practice and Buddhism in general, is get there, show up, commit, be diligent, put in the right effort, and then practice and see what happens in that moment, in that experience, in that place, in that conversation, in that meeting, in that traffic. But often we show up and our mind is elsewhere, thinking about where we were this morning or yesterday. And then we're there and the time goes on and we start thinking about what's later. So show up and then be present. But first thing is you got to show up. And as we go through our lives, often we have a hard time being diligent and committing to showing up. With that, we will start with the meditation practice. Those who are maybe sitting for the first time or here for the first time, welcome. Especially for those who are brand new, a couple things before we start. Nothing's going to happen to you. You're not going to float away. You're not going to have any mystical, magical experiences, most likely. You're not going to figure anything out whatsoever. There are seats up here for those of you who are coming in now. I won't say late again and embarrass you as well. Right? Nothing's going to happen. You won't float. You won't have any mystical, magical experiences. Anyone's mind race all day long, just thinking and thinking and thinking. This isn't going to shut off your racing mind. You won't think nothing. Often people think meditation is about thinking nothing or going blank. You end up sitting there telling yourself, think nothing, think nothing, think nothing. So, posture, you want to be comfortable. If you're on the cushions, offer your help sliding to the front third. Pushing the stomach forward, allows the back to straighten. Shoulders are relaxed. Hands can be on the knees or in the lap. Throughout the practice, you'll hear sounds. This is life. Life is filled with chaos, filled with sounds. This practice is learning to get quiet and still within it. So I'll guide us as we begin. We'll settle into a little bit of silence. And starting with the eyes closed, if comfortable, or slightly open. Mouth open or closed. start with taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. And eventually, settle into a natural rhythm of the breath. Noticing the mind as it wanders, jumping from thought to thought. And gently guide the attention, focus, to the stomach or chest. Breathing in, feel them rise. Breathing out, they fall. Simply continue this practice, observing sensation of breath. As the mind wanders, lost in thought, recognize it. Release that thought. Return attention, focus to the breath. letting go of expectations, letting go of judgments of the practice, just sitting, breathing. Keeping the mind alert, aware of each sound, each thought, each physical sensation. Yet concerned with nothing but sitting, breathing. learning to be comfortable in stillness, in quiet, wanting nothing but to sit and breathe. Where's your mind? Lost in thought? Return attention, focus to the breath. And with the body still, rested, speech, quiet, aware of all sounds. And the mind learning to settle. Know what it's like to just sit and breathe. Knowing with each breath, there's nothing else to do. Nowhere else to go. No one else to be. Everything beautiful, just as it is. Sitting, breathing. Once again, taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. Slowly open the eyes. Slowly begin to move, holding attention on yourself. Most important, with the practice of meditation, is pay attention to how you feel now, immediately after. Compare this to how you typically feel throughout your day. Recognize the difference, if there is one. Ask yourselves how you prefer to feel every day, for the rest of your life. And realize however you feel now, it's quiet, calm, still, or a busy mind, a racing mind, whatever you're sitting with at this moment, has nothing to do with anything I said. It's nothing to do with how we sit, hold the hands or cross the legs. It's nothing to do with the sounds around us, or anything else for that matter. It's everything to do with your own mind, and your own mind's reaction to an external condition. This is what the Buddha called pratitya samutpata, means dependent origination. This is the basis of the Buddha's awakening. The word Buddha simply means awakening. He was a human being no different than anyone in this room who began to understand why he suffered, why he got angry, sad, depressed, stressed, anxious. He began to understand the causal relationship of all phenomena. And what that means, very simply, for every one of us in this room, regardless of where you come from, or what you believe in, or where you think you're going, Your whole life is filled with things that happen. You react. More stuff happens. More reactions. This is our life every day. This practice is learning what it's like to respond to something quietly, peacefully, still. Because for most of us, the way you responded to the last 20 minutes is quite different from how you respond to everything else that's happening throughout your day. And so all we're working on is closing the gap to where the way you feel now is closer to how you feel always. Just as driven, motivated, productive, successful. But with a mind that's steady, clear, focused, distracted by nothing, disturbed by no one. Imagine going a day without being disturbed by someone. Most of us won't even make it out of temple before you're disturbed by someone. This practice is not easy. Meditation, Buddhist practice, it's not an escape. It's probably the most difficult thing you'll ever have to do in your entire life. One, it's working on being kind to every person, always. Now, I'm sure in a room like this, that's not a problem for any of you, so we got that down. Meditation is free. Buddhist practice is free. It's sitting, breathing, learning to be kind to yourself and every person you encounter every moment of your entire life. That's the practice. That's it. And that's why it's extremely difficult. We often turn to meditation, especially if you're newer to it, thinking that it's going to be the thing we use to escape from all of the chaos and troubles and problems in our lives. It's actually the opposite of that. Meditation is not the escape. It is not the running away from. We have enough things we use to turn to escape from emotional, mental stuff. Meditation is a turning in and a waking up to what's present. It's being with things as they are and learning to be with things as they are. Not seeing things we don't like and judging them and critiquing them and labeling them and thinking we have to run around and fix all of them. As I said earlier, yes, we're all perfect exactly how we are and we all could use a little improvement. But it doesn't mean we spend our whole lives thinking everything about us and everything else and everyone else is miserable and terrible. We look at where's our greed, where's our anger, where's our ignorance, and how can we cut through that? With the practice of generosity, with the practice of compassion, with the practice of wisdom. This is the practice. Meditation won't fix anything. It's not about how good of a meditator you are. It's not about how long you can sit perfectly silent and still in some uncomfortable position, right? Because when we go outside these doors, that world didn't finish their meditation and they don't care that you just finished yours. They're going 1,000 miles an hour and you're very quickly going to get wrapped up into everything that's going on out there. And if the moment someone cuts you off or takes too long while you're waiting to get your bagel or coffee or whatever it is, and all of a sudden you're getting frustrated and irritated, what was this for? All right? We must learn to bring this practice into our lives. And I started to earlier talk about, and I'll touch on it briefly and then just open up to questions, but to me the practice of diligence, the practice of showing up, I think this is such a critical piece in the Buddhist teachings. It's actually the last thing he said, and that's why it's so profound to me. You know, just think of knowing a really wise person and they spent 45 years teaching and all of a sudden they're on their deathbed about to go. And they left you one final piece of advice. So I've always paid very close attention to that. And the Buddha said they were worried about who was going to teach them. You know, who's going to be our teacher now? Who's going to lead us? And he said, I've left you everything you need to know. I mean, come on, I've been telling you this for 45 years, so how many more ways do I need to say it, right? And he said, be enlightened to yourself and strive on with diligence. Zen Master Dogen, the founder of the Soto Zen school, lived from 1200 to 1253. He would say, practice as if your hair is on fire. Some of us don't have to worry about that so much. But some of you have some nice, pretty hair out there, right? And if it were on fire, you wouldn't just sit there and be like, yeah, my hair's on fire, this is cool. No, it would hurt, you know? It was funny because, and I bring this up as a real live example, not to, because the funny thing is I don't remember who said it, so I'm kind of free from, at least in my mind, to think that I'm going to embarrass anyone, even though some of you might know who this was. But someone said as we revamped our food redistribution program a couple months ago, we started to change that. You know, we've been doing it for 9-10 years, and we went away from peanut butter and jelly, which was a quick fix solution, and it stuck around for 3 years. So it was a Band-Aid fix that we left on for like 3 or 4 years. But that's another story. And so the question was around, well, if we don't get food that's been redistributed, what are we going to do? And a couple people shared that it really hurt them to see people on the streets who had no food, and that this change in the program might cut into that. And I said, well, if it really hurts you that much, if it really pains you that much, then you'll do something about it. And too often I think people come into Buddhism thinking it's going to be this like soft, gentle thing that's supposed to just make you feel good all the time. What was the first thing the Buddha said? Life is filled with what? Suffering. How pleasant does that sound? Right? He kind of lets you know right away, like, yo, just so you know, your life is going to be filled with suffering. If you're brand new to Buddhism, as an example I've used very often now for a couple years, you got to turn to page 2 because it doesn't mean all of life sucks. It means that you're going to struggle a lot. And we look at the causes of suffering. Why we suffer, why we struggle, why we get this angst, discomfort, depression, anxiety, things like that. But when we feel that pain and we see that pain in others, hopefully that motivates you and inspires you to work harder. Not to just think I'm going to do this meditation Buddhist thing and just check out from everything for a while. It's the opposite. Buddhism is not meant to be just discussed and talked about. Right? People say, oh, I know Buddhism. Well, if you don't practice it, you don't know it. If you don't put it into your lives, you're not learning it. Right? And this ties back to the diligence. It ties back to a word I've been talking a lot about lately, which is accountability. How do we show up for the people and places and things and groups in our lives that are important? How do we show up for them? How do we take care of them? You know, we got like 50 programs that run out of this temple. I can't just be like, you know, I'm just going to check out for a while. Good luck. You know, we got our Dharma of Life program right now at the Pacific Beach Zen Center this morning on a retreat. We have our Delta Beta Tau Pledge class this morning on a retreat at the Buddhist Temple of San Diego. We had our family sangha here from 9 to 10:30 this morning, right? And somehow we're all sitting here now. There's a lot of people that commit to doing things to make all of that happen. That's diligence, that's effort. But if a handful of people just decide, you know what, I'm just going to check out and do nothing, then none of that stuff gets done. And then who suffers from that? Everybody. So when we are diligent, we take on a level of accountability. It helps to understand that we are actually impacting and having an effect on other people's lives. And this is what karma is. Karma is understanding the law of cause and effect. Karma is understanding that how hard we work has an impact on those around us. Or how lazy we are has an impact on those around us. So when the Buddha said strive on with diligence, I take that to heart. And I think it's been one of the most beautiful teachings. Because as you're working through this path and you're trying to figure out this crazy head that we all have, right, myself included, it's not fun. It's not easy, right? Our minds are a bit of a mess. And we have to be patient with ourselves as we work through it. But don't think it's a quick fix. It's not. It's a lifelong practice. You know? So I'll stop there, just open up to questions, meditation, Buddhist practice, anything you're sitting with that I can address. Yeah.
Coming from a few years of meditation, but very new to Buddhism,
Yeah.
what's a misconception that I likely have about either meditation or Buddhism?
What was the first word you said? Coming from a something meditation.
Few years.
Oh, a few years. Okay. Yeah. What is the misconception you might have?
I might have, yeah.
I'm trying to narrow it down to like 10. One is that meditation is not going to solve your problems. I kind of already touched on it, but just very specifically, it's I think the biggest misconception is that people think that meditation is going to fix things in their lives, right? One of my favorite expressions is an angry person who meditates is just an angry meditator, right? So to me, meditation and Buddhist practice, they go hand in hand, but they're not the same thing. I'll start with this. You can meditate that has nothing to do with Buddhism. But to me, Buddhist practice must include the meditation practice. But when you look at what's called the Eightfold Path, which is the path the Buddha taught to help us get through suffering, correct views, I'm not going to touch on all these now, but to run through quickly to make my point. Views, thoughts, speech, action, livelihood, effort, mindfulness, and concentration. Those are done in order. Mindfulness and concentration, those were 7th and 8th. Those were last. Most Western people come into Buddhism who weren't raised around it and think, oh, Buddhism, yay, I'm going to meditate and sit under a tree and read a book, kick my shoes off, and just talk about how peaceful and zen everything is. This practice has been the most intense thing I've ever had to do in my entire life. It's not pretty, it's not pleasant, and it's not fun. And you know why? Because it forces you to look at the nature of every moment of your suffering. And you know what the cause of all that suffering is? You. I mean, my suffering is not you. My suffering is mine. What's your name? Greg. Greg's suffering is all Greg's, right? It is a mirror. So the way Buddhism or meditation is kind of put out in the West, a lot of it is just, it's a lot of fluff, right? Advertising, marketing around meditation sucks. You know, they show people in positions that nobody can sit in. It's not comfortable, and they put smiles on their faces, right? It's a mirror. And when we reflect back on ourselves, we look at this cause of our suffering as the Buddha taught: greed, anger, ignorance, or aversion, right? And if you look at, did you wake up today thinking I'm a greedy, angry, ignorant person? No, right? I did. Not about Greg, but about me. That's what this practice has taught me, is to wake up every day and be real and genuine and authentic with, why am I struggling? Why am I suffering? And meditation won't fix that. Meditation to me allows you to sit with things as they are, and then with a calm, clear, settled mind, engage in the world. Right? I don't know if that's an answer to your question, but probably enough to chew on for another 5 months or years. Yeah? Yeah. Yeah.
I was wondering if you could explain karma more, or like recommend something that explains it very well.
Yeah. So karma literally means action. It is along the lines of what you asked. It is, to me, I feel the most misunderstood teaching in the Western culture, because we often think karma is what goes around. When I say we, the collective general idea over thousands of people I've asked is people tend to think karma is what goes around comes around. And that's a very selfish view of karma, right? That makes it seem as if everything is about me. And as you know, Ryan, the Buddha taught the reason we suffer is because of the sense of me. My ego, my pride, myself, I'm most important. So as long as I do good, then good's going to come back to me. As long as I do bad, then bad's going to come back to me. And we try to own everything. Karma is not what we get, it's what we give. The Buddha taught very clearly we generate karma 3 ways: body, speech, mind. What we think, what we say, and what we do. Right? So imagine you're playing pool. You hit the cue ball into the rack. Every ball goes into a different direction. Our entire lives, we are that cue ball. Every person, place, and thing we encounter, we have an impact on. Right? It's a law of cause and effect. We tend to think, right? So if I get up and I punch Mike, which I won't, because he's a nice guy and he's bigger than me and he'd probably beat me up, right? But if I get up and I punch Mike, he's got a lot of options, right? But 2 main ones are punch Jeff back or run off, right? And since he's a great guy and a good, practicing Buddhist dude, he's like, I'm just going to walk away from this, right? And he gets in his car, but he's still frustrated, angry, and he storms off and gets into a crash. You know who's karmically responsible for that? Me. Not legally, not morally, but karmically. My action led to that action. We don't even see, I can't even put a number on it, but I was going to say like 90% of the karmic footprint we have in the world, we don't see it. Right? Every person we've interacted with our entire life, we left an impression on them with what we think, what we say, and what we do, and we don't see it. So karma, to simplify, I look at it as not what we get, as I said, but what we give. And does that help? Yeah.
I'm sure you get variations on this question a lot, but I don't know that I've ever actually heard you address it directly. Yes. So a lot of what you say is about, how to counteract being domineering and angry and all of that kind of thing. What about the sort of flip side of that, of being, you know, tendency to be a bit of a doormat, or, you know, are there limits to generosity, that sort of thing? How does the...
Yeah. I love how you were inferring that I've been more domineering and less of a doormat. That was great. Since I know and love Kathy well enough, I've learned to pick up the nature of your questions. That's a great, it's a great question, right? I think that the approach really can be the same, right?
I experienced that. I just want a little
Yeah,
understanding of how it works.
I think if someone is the domineering, the very strong nature, very much out there, or somebody is kind of always being taken advantage of or stepped on or you know, used in some manner, the approach I feel is still the same, is to ask ourselves, what is my intention in this moment? And if this intention is driven by the greed, anger, ignorance, right? If I am allowing myself to be stepped on, the doormat, taken advantage of, am I being greedy? Am I being angry? Am I being ignorant? And if that occurrence is happening in a negative way, you know, in a painful, harmful way, then it's probably coming from a place of maybe anger or ignorance. Ignorance that says, I'm not good enough, I'm not smart enough, I don't love myself enough, so I'm just going to allow people to walk all over me, right? But there are times where maybe one takes advantage of you in a healthy manner, and we feel good about it, right? You probably had, or someone's probably had a time in their life where you know a friend is taking advantage of you, but you know they need it. And so you feel okay with that. And so the intention in that moment is that's coming from compassion. That's coming from wisdom. I'm a doormat right now, but this is what they need. You know, my master, somebody asked him once, and this was when I was out, this would have been 12, 13 years ago in Taiwan, and somebody said to him, and he became a monk when he was 12, and you know, this time he was probably 80 years old, and they said, do you ever feel like you're being taken advantage of? He said, yes, all the time, and that's why I'm here. And I recognize that that's not something that all of us are able to work into our lives, to just always feel like it's okay for people to take advantage. So there's a balance there, but I still think why it's good to explore, how have I allowed myself, or why am I becoming a doormat, as you said, in this situation? Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yes. I see a hand. I don't see a body. There you go. I just saw a hand.
Hi, Jeff.
Hi.
Thanks a lot. You know, I'm thinking, especially the last couple of weeks, about this thing of disturbances, things or situations with people, and I really struggle with slowing down my reaction time so that I have a choice to respond the way I would prefer to respond. So an example is I did an art class, 2.5 hours. I had this project that was sealed, beautiful, and with my back turned, my friend said, you know, there's a hair in there. And I responded immediately and said something snarky like, your attention to details paid me us.
You said it or you thought it? You said it.
Oh no, I said it.
Yeah. For my response, it's important. That's why I asked.
Yeah, this is exactly my
Yeah.
issue. This is my question.
Yeah.
Then I have to go back and sort that out, and so I process it through so that by the next day, I'm centered again and calm as I interact with this person.
Yes.
But I just really don't like that struggle I have with that quick reactivity.
Yes.
And that's just a silly little example.
That's great.
metaphorically. So
Yeah.
that's my question. How can you offer some guidance on that?
Yeah, it's a great question. A few things just to help me understand. When you said that, because you also said that the next day you kind of processed it, right? So it went from the moment to the next day where you started to process it and work through it. But at the moment that it happened, right when you said it, how did you feel after you said it? Did you feel totally fine with saying it, or did you feel like not okay?
No, I was frustrated with myself, and I felt like I was creating a chain, because then she had to say something defensive.
Yeah. So that's what I'm getting at. So you immediately after you said it, and I know this isn't the nature of your question. This will help. You immediately after you said it recognize, wow, I really shouldn't have said that. Something to that effect.
Or I wish I handled that differently.
Wish you handled it differently, right?
Saying nothing would have been great.
Right. So first and foremost, not just for you, for everybody here, you've heard me say this before. I call that progress. There's been times in all of our lives where that happens. You say that, and you wouldn't even give it a second thought. This doesn't answer your question yet, but I just want to point this out for everybody. Because some people maybe in here say things like that and think, yeah, it didn't bother me. I was happy to be mean or rude or nasty to somebody because I felt they deserved it. Your question is, I don't want to be that way. How do I stop? Right? There's a couple different ways. Does that make sense so far? There's a couple different things, and one, I have to share this because I think it's funny in my head. So when I was growing up my whole life, my grandfather, my mom's dad, anytime you ordered food or something like that, and you got there was maybe a little hair or a fly or a bug or something in it, and you would point out, maybe there's a bug in the drink, and he would always say, don't tell people or everyone's going to want one, right? He made it seem like a special thing, right? So I guarantee you were possibly the only one who sealed their art project with a hair in it. That in its own right made yours special and phenomenal. It starts with understanding that when that person made that comment, it attacked your ego, it attacked your pride, it attacked your vision or dream for whatever you thought you were creating, right? It hurt. It was like a dagger at you. And the fight or flight thing kicked in, and the fight response came back. They said, I don't like this, I'm coming back, right? A couple things, and I love, John Kabat-Zinn, I believe, created this acronym. It's called SOBER. And it all happens very fast. But the first one is the S, which is to stop. In that moment when you feel like the dagger through the heart or the ego or the pride, you stop. And you observe it. Recognize what's happening right now. I don't feel good. This hurt my pride. This hurt my ego. This person said this. I'm not pleasant with this. Then you breathe. You take a few deep breaths. That's the key part. Take 2 or 3 deep breaths. That's it. Even if it's a half a breath. Right? If it's that anger half breath, sometimes that's enough. So stop, observe, breathe, and then expand, the E. Expand to recognize, especially now where you're at with understanding these teachings and working through them, that expand to the point where you realize tomorrow, I'm probably going to wonder, why did I say that? Expand to that moment right there. Recognize that it's just, and again, like you said, it's a silly, simple example, but there are things that are serious in our lives that the same thing happens. Right? So expand to know that your life is so much greater than that one comment, right? Than the one person that you feel you were embarrassed by or shamed by. And then you respond, or you react. And in this case, you react differently by saying something to the effect of, thank you for pointing out the fact that I'm the only one here who is lucky enough to have a piece of hair saved in their artwork. But if you don't do those first, stop, observe, breathe, expand, you just jump straight to react.
It's the stop part that I'm in trouble with.
Yeah. Keep practicing, But it's progress. You're asking the question. So you'll get there. Yeah.
This is sort of a technical question about a form of meditation. Because I guess, when I used to meditate on my own before I started coming here, I would always do it lying down.
Mm-hmm.
So I never learned what to do with my back or my shoulders. So I'm not sure, normally when I come here and I meditate, when I say meditate well, I just mean that I finish with a good feeling, a better feeling than when I meditate in a less productive way. Usually when I meditate well, it's like I sort of just lie my back down on the breast, and sort of like I'm lying down. And I don't know if it's because I'm used to that, or I'm unable to sit up straight.
Yeah.
Because to me, this, and I know this is sort of off topic, because it's not actually about my philosophy of Buddhism or anything, but
more about the philosophy of Buddhism than anything else.
But I guess to me, because sitting up just uses muscle groups, it just automatically creates tension for me, and I wanna be able to use those muscle groups, but not feel like I'm using them.
Sure. Yeah.
And be able to relax them.
So a couple things, and I'll kind of close with this thought because we're just at about 12 o'clock here. I want to try to end on time. The Buddha taught very clearly sitting, standing, walking, or lying down. And it's really a metaphor for, first off, understanding that meditation is about concentration and focus on the present moment. And, you know, in the Zen practice specifically, if you feel pain in your leg, then be with that pain. It's present, right? So physical pain, you know, if it's to the point you need to move, you move, that's fine. What you don't want to do is sit there for 20 minutes thinking, am I in pain, am I not in pain, should I move, should I not move? So you want to adjust to whatever you need to do to be comfortable. And I think slowly over time, you know, at the, you know, old age of, I think 20 you are now, how old are you?
I'm
18, sorry. So, I mean, now that you're like 18 and all, and your body's starting to, you know, really get, like, doesn't work so much anymore. You know, I think for you, I'll talk to you more outside of here on this because I have some ideas, but start doing some yoga, some stretching, you know, working on getting the back flexible, a little, you know, healthier. But don't get so wrapped up in thinking that the posture or the way you're sitting or laying down is what's important, right? If you're sitting, standing, walking, lying down, eating, you know, all of these things, you have the ability to concentrate and focus on the present moment.
So you can meditate whenever in any thought.
Your entire life is your meditation practice. Your meditation practice is your entire life, ultimately. It's not, there's my meditation Buddhist thing and then there's everything else. It is a bringing together. It is all the same, all happening, all occurring, all at once. There is no separation, right? And posture, which is something I'm usually pretty poor at, except when I'm sitting, especially in the Zen practice, is very critical to find a comfortable posture that you can maintain and sit with. But most important, not just for you, but for everybody, is to make sure you don't think, and it also goes back to one of the misconceptions, but don't think that how you sit means that you're having a good or bad meditation, right? You want allow the body to be relaxed, but also attentive and aware, right? You know, when you're lying down, you can also do a meditation, but keep the mind attentive and aware, right? So, yoga, because when you hit 20, man, it's all downhill from there. Yeah. So, I'm going to close on that. We'll join palms. May the benefit of this practice be shared with all beings in all directions. May all beings be at peace. May all be free from suffering. May any merit gained from this practice be transferred to Papa Hatch and to Morgan and Blair and Christine and their entire family during their time of suffering. May they all be at peace and free from suffering. May we all be at peace and free from suffering.